Hey guys, we are back and moving right along through Genesis. This time we are in chapter 14. So, still the first book of the Bible. We're in the 14th chapter, and we're going to cover the entire chapters, verses 1 through 24. This time we're going to spend some time looking at Abram and Lot. Now, we remember from prior chapters that there came a time where Lot and Abram, who were traveling together, reach a point that both of their wealth, of their homes, the things they've acquired, their cattle, the sheep, the land, everything that they have has become too much to be supported by the space that they're in. And because they don't own the land, they are foreigners in these areas, and they are holding on to this space, and they are kind of competing with the people who own the land. They're competing with the cultures and countries and cities that they are traveling through for resources. And so there is a decision made that the two of them will separate. And Abram is going to allow Lot to choose which way he goes, and he will go the opposite direction. Not because there's bad blood, not because they're fighting, but because they recognize that we have outgrown being together and it's a time for us to separate. So they separate. Lot chooses the plains near Sodom and Gomorrah, and he actually pitches his tent inside of Sodom and moves into that city. And Abram goes the opposite direction, and the land is able now to support these two smaller families instead of the two of them together being too large. And so there is a period of time where we follow Abram, and again, we see them together in this situation. So in Genesis chapter 14, we see that there is a kind of truce that is existing in the land. There are several kings. There are 9, in fact, that are mentioned in the first 2 chapters. And there is a group of these 9 kings that have kingdoms and people underneath them. And there is a rebellion where 5 kings separate out, and they rebel in the 13th. So 12 years they serve together. They have this treaty, this truce, and everybody is kind of underneath this one king that kind of leads all the other kings. And there is a period of time where in the 13th year, 5 of these kings say, nah, I don't think we need to do that. And it's more of us than them. So let's separate and do our own thing. And for a period of time that sits. And then in the 14th year, that king that is kind of above all the other kings is like, you know what? We're going to go to war. We're going to go ahead and subdue this rebellion. We're not going to allow them to do their own thing. We are going to come together, and it is going to be by force. And so there is a battle that ensues. And there is this fight where these 4 kings and against these 5 kings, and they each bring their armies and they bring their people together, and there is a fight. And they are fighting in this space where the land or the terrain has like these tar pits kind of things. And so they are fighting, but it's not working out well for the 5 kings. And so the kings run off. They realize they're being defeated, and if I die here, I'm going to die in battle, and they go ahead and get themselves out of there. So the king of Sodom and the king of Gomorrah are 2 of the kings that run away. And we see that in, what is this? In verse 10 in verse 10, and we see in 11 that when they run off, they leave. So in verse 10, it says that the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled. Some of their people fell. Some of their people were lost in battle, but they ran off. And when they ran off, in verse 11, we see that the enemy takes all their goods. So their land becomes captive. The spoils of their land are their people, their cattle, the resources that are in that area. The kings or the countries that they were fighting against go in because they ran off and abandoned their posts. So they come in and take everything. And one of the things that they take among all the other resources is Lot and his family. And so in verse 12, they see that they took Lot, who lived in Sodom, and his goods, and they left. So they basically have captured him. He is a prisoner of war, and he comes in. So these people that are captured are typically slaves. They become servants. Lots of things happen to them. And it says in verse 13 that the one who escaped came and told Abram. So sometimes when, I'm not going to call it gossip because this isn't gossip. This is him coming and saying, hey, your nephew needs help. So sometimes when we are in desperate situations, we are feeling hopeless, we are overtaken by the things that have come, and world or life or whatever it is taking us out. We find ourselves stuck and we don't have any more options or resources. There is somebody who can help us. And in this situation, there is someone who runs and says, Abram, your nephew has been captured. There is a war in the land that he was in, and he was captured, and his family was taken. And so Abram, who is living by the oaks of Mamre, and this is a kind of giant grove of trees that has good shade. And obviously, if there's a grove of trees, there's good water. There's a lot of things that are happening that are making this a great place to stay. So he has pitched his tent there. Abram and his family, his wife Sarai, everybody is there, and they're being supported by this kind of great patch of land. And so in verse 14, it says, when Abram heard that his nephew had been taken captive, he led forth some troops. He called his servants into war. He prepared them for battle, and they went out. And he was like, not mine, not none of mine. Not today you won't. And so he takes these men, it's 318 men who were born in his home. Now, when we talk about his servants, and I'm saying servants because this is a job. They are like butlers and nannies and maids. These are people who live in his home and support his home. They are shepherds. They are, they are butchers. They are cooks. He is wealthy and he has servants. He does not have slaves in the way that we think about American slavery. So he called his servants in and was like, hey, they got my nephew and we need to go to war. And these men were, your people are my people and we're going to go. And so they go out against this, and they meet up with some allies, the people the land that he's living on, because Abraham is blessed and wherever he goes is blessed. And so the people who are around Abram are being blessed as well. So they fine with him staying there. But when it comes time, these are his allies, these are his friends, and they call in people to go with him. So there are people that go out and they go to war. And when they go to war, in verse 16, it says he brought back all the goods and also brought back his nephew with his goods. So not just all the goods of the country mixed together, but Lot and his individual possessions and the women and the people. So not just Lot came back, not just Lot's family came back, but he went and took back everything that belonged to Lot and the city that he lived in. So Sodom and Gomorrah, he took all of the spoils back. You're not going to have nothing after this. You mess with my nephew, and I came in here and I took it. And not only did I take his stuff, but I took everybody's stuff. And so after he comes back and he defeats the king who was, now this is the original king that was over the group of 9. So when the one separated out and rebelled, he went to go squish that rebellion, and in reality, he got wiped out. So now that he was defeated, these kingdoms are all independent again. They were all standing on their own because the one kind of big king that was over the 9 that the ones rebelled against, he's gone now. And so he brings back everything. And so the kings from Sodom and Gomorrah go to meet him. When they see him coming and he has all these people lined up, he got these animals lined up. He got, there's the donkeys are laden down, the camels or whatever, the bulls or whatever they are bringing back. They have all of this stuff attached to him because he brought back all the goods. Everything that was taken, he brought it back. And they run out and they meet him and they say, bless, in verse 20, blessed be the Most High God, which delivered you. Blessed is Abram of the Most High God. These are not people who are believers. These are not people who worship the same way that he does, but they are smart enough to know that his God, the one true God, is God. Like, it's not going to be, we're going to, blessed to be the God that I worshiped, that I prayed to, that had me struggling in war, but blessed be your God who made you victorious, who brought you out of here, who met you going with this little group of men when it was entire kingdoms and armies that went and failed. You went in with this small group of men and came back out victorious. And so recognizing sometimes when you move and you move under the protection, I'm not going to say unction, but moving under the protection and guidance of God, moving when God tells you to move, and taking God with you when you go to do things. When you say, God, this I gotta take care of, and I need you to go with me and make me victorious in this, and I'm gonna worship you in advance for everything that you're doing, and taking God into these things, you will come out and people are gonna worship your God because they see the God in you. They see the worship on you. And so it says in verse 20 that Abram took the spoils and gave them away. He gave them 1/10 of everything. He gave them a tithe of everything to these people. And when he does this, they're like, no, 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 no. These are spoils of war. You won. These are your items. I want you to keep them. Just keep everything. Don't give us nothing. Just let us have the people back. Because we got good land. We just need people to come back to work. I don't need you to come. I don't need you to give me all the spoils. And Abram says to the king of Sodom in verse 22, I'm going to read it in two different versions so we can understand how they relate. In verse 22 in the King James Version, it says, I have lifted up my hand unto the Lord, the Most High God, the possessor of heaven and earth, and that I will not take a thread, even to a shoe latchet, and that I will not take anything that is thine, lest thou shouldest say, I have made Abram rich. Now, all of those words may have meant nothing to you, but you understood, shouldn't say, I have made Abram rich. So we're going to read it in the New Revised, which is my preferred version, to study with the King James. And verse 22 says, but Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have sworn to the Lord that I lifted my hand up. When y'all go to court or when you take an oath, you raise your right hand and you make an oath. This is what he's saying. I have sworn to the Lord, or I've lifted my hand to the Lord, God Most High, maker of heaven and earth. He is acknowledging this is the God. This is the God that made everything that you're standing on and everything you looking and seeing. This is the God. The God. This is not a God. This is not a possible God. This is the God, the maker of everything. I'm letting you know, since you blessing my God, I want you to know that this is a God you need to know. And in verse 23, it says that I wouldn't take a thread or a sandal thong or anything that is yours so that you might not say I have made Abram rich. So while the two are saying the exact same thing, they're saying it in a different way, which is why I like the New Revised as they study with the King James. So what he's saying is, I'm not going to take so much as a thread. I don't want a piece of thread. I don't want a new buckle for my sandal. I don't want anything from you, because what you won't be able to say is, you made me rich. If you give me all these possessions, then you can say, oh, that sheep right there came from me, and that sheep gave birth to all of this lineage of sheep. You won't be able to say that. I'm not going to take a thing. I don't want anything from you. My God supplies what I need. My God took me into this battle. My God brought me out of this battle. I don't need anything from it. This was yours to begin with. It's going to be yours now. Don't give me anything. Just provide, verse 24, what they've already eaten. Just what we needed to survive, what we needed in this moment, just what we had for breakfast and lunch. I don't even need your dinner. Don't feed me in the future, but just what they've eaten, what's already been consumed, what's already gone. Now, for those who went with me, I'm not going to speak for them. Get them their portion. Give the allies that I've had, the people who met with me underneath this grove of trees, the people that were allies to me, let them have what they're going to have. But what you won't do is say that you did something that I know God did. So, quick recap for this. Lot has pitched his tent. He has set up his household in the city of Sodom. And there is a battle between some kings. So there is a group of 9 kings. One of them is the leader of the 9. And that's like, that's the chairman of the board. And then there's the board of directors. So there are several kings that decide that they don't want to be part of this anymore. And there's a split. And at the point of that split, the main king was like, you know what? I don't think we're going to let them stay out there like that anymore. So what they do is there is a fight. There is a battle. And there is 5 kings against 4 kings. And what happens is, in that process, the king of Sodom and the king of Gomorrah run and hide because they realize they're not winning. And when they do, the enemy goes in and takes everything that they have. Takes the people, the properties, the land, the resources of their area. He pulls it all out. And when that happens, someone comes and tells Abram. Abram was like, not none of mine, not my nephew. And he goes and he grabs the servants of his house. This is how you know this is a wealthy man. He had servants, 318 men. He also had their support. He also had them ready to go to war with him. He went with him. He didn't send him. He went with him. This is how you know he's a good person. Nobody is really right. Most of us not going to ride for our bosses like that. But when you got a good boss, you be like, you know what, I'll stay an extra hour or two because I know you need the help. So this is how you know the character of who he is that people stood behind him and were ready to go to war with him. And they go to war and they are victorious because they took God with them. And they go and they gather Lot and all his belongings and all the people. And he brings back even the wealth of the countries that were taken. And he gives it back to the kings. And when the kings offer him, hey, you can keep this. Just give me back the people. You can have all the stuff. He was like, nope, I don't want it. Because God got me. I don't need what you got. I'm going to go ahead and get what God got. I'm going to take this. He told me not to. And so that's what happens. And this puts us in a position now where Lot is returning to Sodom to go back and live with his things, his people, his property, all of that stuff goes back. And Abram again separates and goes back to where he lives. Just because we are not together, just because there is a situation where I got to love somebody from a distance, does not mean that I can't ride for you when I need to. When it's a situation and God has said, go, help, be part of, do, trust I can come through. Loving somebody from a distance doesn't mean you never speak to them again. It doesn't mean that you're never there for them again. It doesn't mean that you guys are never what you used to be. It just means that for this particular moment, y'all need to have some space. But when it comes time and God sends you, go. Remember to take God with you in everything that you are doing. You all be blessed.